Today we are talking about the power of consistency as we celebrate the 100th episode of the podcast that was just published recently. Naturally, I wanted to hop on here and share about it and its significance with you. I knew that this was a milestone worth celebrating, but when I dug into statistics, I really noticed how big of a deal this 100 episode mile marker was. Okay, so statistics say that, quote, most podcasts fail very early, with 90% failing to get past the first three episodes. And then 90% of those remaining quitting before episode 20. So, and then the timing of this 100 episode celebration kind of coming very close to the new year felt very relevant too. That's why we're having this conversation here because there's a lot here that's worth talking about. Because studies show, you guys, that 40 to 50% of individuals make New Year's resolutions, about half or just under half. And then about a quarter of those people quit within the first week. And then about two-thirds of those give up by the end of January. Then looking towards the end of the year, over 10% of people keep their resolutions throughout the entire year. So if I'm doing my math right, check it. But about 5% of the population ends up keeping their goals that sets them. So clearly, we have a cause for concern around consistency. Let's talk about that today and see what we can do about it. So, what we're going to discuss, what this means. We'll talk about the relevance of it and why consistency is important. And if you ask me, quite critical, and perhaps even the success factor. Then we'll go into what I learned to get here, what I learned to get to 100 episodes and really break the mold, the stats to see that level of success. But not only that, but steps to shortcut your own growth journey. Then we'll touch on how to keep going. What are tips to move forward faster with your own goals that you have? So, hi, welcome back to the Grace Based Coaching Building a Faith First Life and Business podcast, where we help ambitious women live lives directed by God and not driven by anxiety. I am Alexandra Cavill. I am your host. I am a Christian life and leadership coach for women who are carrying a lot and want to walk in more peace and clarity and purpose. So, if you are wanting rocket fuel to accomplish your goals that keep finding their way onto your to-do list year after year, or if you want to actually write down the goal that you've been always thinking of but haven't actually done, I'd love to personally invite you to visit gracebasechristiancoaching.com/book-online to explore more of what it could look like if we were to get started together so that you can live your most intentional Christ in our life. Well, let's talk about it. Consistency. All right, so goal setting, whatever it may be, it is easier said than done, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about what's going on with what is making consistency hard, no matter what it may be. For most of us, it's because we want quick results. We want to see progress fast, maybe even before we put in all that much effort or work. You might be feeling discouraged. Maybe that's why consistency isn't happening. Maybe you're underestimating the effort doing something was going to take. It sounded like a fun and fabulous goal, and you've seen other people do it, and you're like, oh, let me give it a go. But wow, that is more than I anticipated or expected, right? Does that sound familiar? Related, right? Maybe you underestimate the time it'll take. It looks fast and polished, the end product, doesn't it? But the time it takes to get to that end state is a lot. Maybe consistency is hard because you've not been defining what success looks like. Sometimes when we're taking progress or making action, but we don't really know, like when we've hit good, if you will, that can be really difficult. And so as we begin something new, it's critical to say, well, what does success look like? How do I know that I'm doing well in this? For a lot of individuals, and I've even hit this part for myself, maybe you don't have a community. Maybe you're not connected with others who are running their own races and dedicated and passionate about something. Maybe that is part of what's going on. And maybe you don't have a coach seeing you, helping you to see what you cannot on your own. The times where I've grown greatest in business, if you're new here, check out one of the recent episodes, how JCC tripled in growth in the past year. I mean, an only God moment. So I break down what some of the things are that I partnered with him on that truly led to breakthrough success. And one of those elements was working with others, working with coaches, creating community. So important. So think about for you. Is it the quick results, feeling discouraged, underestimating time or effort, not defining success, or perhaps not having community or a coach around you? What is it that making consistency more difficult than it needs to be? Think on that for a second. Okay. Okay, next, what what I learned is going on towards this journey to 100 episodes that you might find interesting and to support you to and or not feel so alone in whatever you are navigating and encourage you to keep moving forward. Okay, so with the podcast, I personally, when I had started, I liked it. It's always been my favorite way, y'all, to create content. I love a little bit of a longer form content, a more personal high touch, something that is truly going to leave you better than when you started, right? You're going to walk away changed with a new idea to think on with an action to take. Like that's the heart of coaching. I liked it. I liked podcasting, but I was getting frustrated with not knowing if it was translating or seeing results of all the effort and time I was putting in. Instant growth or financial gain, it wasn't apparent. And honestly, up until this past year, I wasn't really sure about that. Well, let me tell you a couple stories here right now. It was interesting. And I, maybe there's some others like this, but didn't specifically call it out. But I've been doing the podcast, right? It took time. It was a journey of a little bit of starting and stopping, but episode 1 was late 2019. Episode 100 was early 2026. Y'all, this has been a journey. This has been a commitment. There's been loyalty here and longevity. But anyhow, it was years. Well, when a prospective client was listening before she actually signed on. And you know what? In some instances, like that's exactly what it's supposed to be. But when she was ready to sign on, hey Angie, she was ready, which was so wonderful for both her and me too. And now that she, has done so much of the pre-work, she knows what faith-based coaching is about. She is seeing massive results, which is the best. She was primed and totally knew what to expect from listening to this content pillar, if you will. So just know whatever that is for you, if you're a content creator too, you're putting in deposits that are going to pay off in big ways down the road. Having faith in that and confidence in that, you are priming your clients and you are getting better at your craft too as you're doing it. Okay, done is better than perfect. As a perfectionist, and I know most of my clients are all or nothing type of women, it's really hard and uncomfortable to get started and to do something that you don't feel is absolutely perfect. But the more time I spent as an entrepreneur, the more I realized that it's important to take action and to do it imperfectly. That was absolutely something I learned along the way and am still walking out, right? There are still different improvements and there always will be. But you know what? Even despite those, this content is transforming and blessing so many listeners' lives, and it's worth it. So, what is that thing for you that people might be missing out on because you are holding on to the idol of perfection that was never yours to carry? Okay. Next, there was a clear correlation between consistent content creation and the biggest years in my business. When I produced increased amounts of content, did it consistently, those were the years in which I served the highest number of clients. So maybe you're not seeing it at first, maybe it's not clear, but growth is actually on the other side through consistency. The numbers don't lie, and want to give you that encouragement too. The next thing you might want to consider is, oh, it, so not only a couple episodes ago we talked about what caused significant growth in 2025, but also because of that, what I'm doing in 2026. So if you are in a place where maybe you did goal set, or maybe you did and it's not working exactly the way you thought it was. Maybe you haven't goal set yet. You're like, let me see what she's doing. Get some ideas from that. I am very openly sharing what that looks like, and coming off of an incredible year of personal and professional growth, what I learned from that and what that means moving forward. So check that out if that would bless you and benefit you too. Next, what I learned from moving forward in consistency is to think for a minute on what trends might it be worth looking into for what you're doing. So think about that. Think about what's going on, no matter what it is. Is that, I've been exercising and maybe not necessarily seeing the results that I'd expect just yet. But like, take a second, think about, well, maybe that will come. Maybe you need an expert to support you in that. But also, what is the correlation maybe between your exercise and mental health? What is the correlation between your exercise and your performance at work? Think about what you're doing and these other factors that it might be influencing too, and be encouraged by that. Next, thinking about maybe another goal has been going to church in person. That's something that you love the idea of, it's important, but it's just not been happening the way that you know it could or should. Maybe you notice that when you do it, when it's happening, you have a deeper satisfaction in your relationships. There's a richness and depth to that. Maybe you are pausing and being still a little more often. Maybe you're having gratitude for things that you typically wouldn't normally, okay? And then maybe one more, another trend to think about, tithing. Maybe you've been in seasons where you've been giving more so and other seasons where you haven't. Thinking about what are the correlations between tithing and your ability to save. I know when we're giving the most in our family, that's when we have the most generosity, which is just the best. There's so many benefits to so many goals that I know are on your list. And to just think a little bit more broadly, what are some of the impacts that are happening? And to really like sit in that and let that drive and motivate you towards consistency. Okay, next, keep going. How to keep going. So, what worked with me personally and the podcast, and then some specific tips that might support you too in your efforts towards consistency. Okay, so notice that, and that data says audiences fall off with inconsistency. And so, just like anyone else, think about a friendship. When you don't meet with someone as regularly, um, a lot of times you can. So, some friendships you pick back up where you left off, and that is great. Those are the people that you want and are enormous blessings in life. But for others, when you don't just, maybe a little bit more of acquaintances, you don't get together as often, there's not that depth of connection or maybe even trust to share something deeper that you would with another friend that you see more often. So think about, just like you are, if you're also a creator, building an audience, business owner, what are your minimum expectations? So maybe start at something. I heard a story about someone's like, I want to work out 4 times a week. That was their goal for years and it just wasn't happening. And then there was the idea, well, what if you just did once? And it kind of felt like cheating or not worth it. But the individual said, I'm going to be open to that. I will try it out. And you know what? She did do it once a week. And that gave her the motivation and the momentum to add on from that. So for me, it was, let's try doing 2 podcasts a month, see how that goes. Flex that muscle. It became my new norm, if you will, and added to 3. And now we're even thinking, what could 4 look like, right? Like it just becomes easier. You expand your capacity. And other little story, the podcast, it's not, there's a lot behind the scenes that happens over here, which shameless plug, by the way, if this content has blessed you, if you could take just 30 seconds, honestly, maybe even 10, to leave a 5-star rating. If you have loved this, it would mean the world. It truly would. Because that a little bit behind the scenes, pull back the curtain, there's a time creating content, really thinking about some key stories, key resources, custom coaching questions for you guys with this. It takes time to edit what I'm going to say, then to record it, I'm a mom of three preschool age girls, right? There's not a lot of time and windows between serving clients that there is to do this. And then it's not only doing that, then it is marketing to all the places. And so that, as you would imagine, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort with all the behind the scenes, which is worth it for the reasons that I just shared, but understandably so can lead to burnout. And so for me, it was enlisting a VA to help to publish to all the places and with a little bit of the logistics, things like that. So, what is it for you that can be a pressure release valve? Think on that and consider taking that seriously. The next one is to batch when you can. So, for me, I'll write several episodes at once, I'll record several at once. To when you're in the zone in a flow state, what can you do to prolong that, make it easy, to make the most out of it? Think about what that might look like for you. Okay. The next, have a specific niche. That was something big that really helped with this too. There's this a simple but really effective quote that if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. But especially as women, right? Like we want to connect with a lot of people. We don't want to offend anyone. We want to be friendly. But how can you best serve the people that the Lord has led you to? Like think on that. Who exactly are you called to speak to? And what problems are you called to support them in solving most effectively? Okay. We're not supposed to be or do everything for everyone, right? That's God's job. That's God's job. Okay. So a long-term plan too, I'll add that can be motivating and supportive for your journey over time. So thinking about like what is the core problem that you're solving? What are the different sub problems, if you will? And then what is the journey, right? Like where might someone begin? And then what's the next thing that they need help with? Whatever your type of business is, like kind of just think on that. Think on the client journey, think on what they're experiencing and how your content can match that. And then think too, um, we live in a world, you guys, that is so chaotic and noisy, and there's so much distraction that even if we are so motivated and so dialed in, it can be really easy to lose focus, or even for myself, or even like, what is the point in all of this? And so, knowing whatever the thing that you're called or convicted to be consistent in, how does it fit into the bigger picture? How is it a key part of your larger strategy? Regularly tying back to that, regularly, maybe every day. I'm not even kidding you guys. Every day, looking back to this as you begin your work, before you do a certain task, to give you that motivation, give you that heart like Jesus around it, that conviction, the compassion to be dialed in. And, whatever you do, doing it all unto God and for his glory, good stuff. And then next thing out for you, what might be important to consider based on the trends that you're seeing and learning? So maybe is your next step, it could even be to simply pause and reflect. Is it to take time monthly to think about, let me quiet the noise. What even is happening? What is working? How can I do more of that? For a lot of achievers, it's almost like living in a place of discomfort or struggle becomes normal. And it can feel really uncomfortable to be in a comfortable place sometimes. So, and that can lead us to perhaps sometimes, to be quite honest, spend too much time on things that aren't as important because it feels comfortable to be in a struggle, as odd as that sounds, right? I know that resonates with some of you. So to think about that, think about what's working. How can you intentionally support that? Think about those areas that are hard. What are one or two things that can simply provide a little bit of support, move you forward, even one or two steps? Maybe it's, I know for me, having a shorter term commitment can be extremely motivating and really be a launch pad for success. Is it determining a commitment for yourself for the next 3 months? Maybe and challenging yourself to do it. Maybe it's some sort of content creation challenge. Maybe it's a personal fitness challenge. Maybe it's a challenge around cultivating community that you know that it's time to pour into. So, recap, y'all, we talked about consistency. We covered consistency, what it means, and why it's important, why that might be the thing that unlocks so much for you in this new year. I shared what I learned on my journey to 100 podcast episodes, some different perspectives that might be helpful for you to consider or try out as you are on your own journey to consistency. And then I talked about tips to help you keep going on that thing that the Lord has ignited a passion for in your heart. It's important, it's worth it. And He created you with these specific and unique gifts to serve His people that He so intentionally placed around you. So be encouraged, be motivated by that. And if you want consistency, faith-based coaching is where it's at. As my sweet client who I featured in this episode shared the story about her, as she said, with coaching, her long-term goals became her short-term goals. So that's what coaching offers: less headache and less hassle, and more hope and holiness as you navigate in a faith-based way. Definitely subscribe to our podcast, and or if you like visual YouTube channel, if you're not already, screenshot, send this to a friend, send this to a business bestie who could use this type of focus and encouragement in her life too. And so excited to catch back up here soon with all of the goodness, God-centered goodness that we've got coming for you in the new year. Thanks for listening.